Hello everybody, welcome in. Today is Wednesday, the 18th of December 2019, and I wanted to do a quick unboxing and overview of the Canon XF400 cameras that I'm excited about. Since I started broadcasting, I've started with a standard definition camera that was, I think it was a Canon XF400 way back. And to give you some perspective on that, just starting the YouTube channel about 11, 12 years ago, I purchased this camera. I was looking for the cheapest thing I could find. I always use camcorders. I don't like using DSLRs. DSLRs are clumsy and they require two hands to operate. Camcorder, in my opinion, is much more appropriate for live streaming, especially the kind of content that I do. So I started with the FS100. I had to buy the tripod and the memory card, and of course there was no live streaming back then. And then I had to get editing software and, the minimum investment. And I didn't even have a microphone. I was using the in-camera microphone, so the audio was fantastic. That was probably a $500 investment to start making YouTube videos that people can watch for free. I never knew you could make money from YouTube at that time. I never had any intent. But after about a year of having made a couple of videos that I really wanted to make at my expense, I remember $500 12 years ago is probably closer to about $700 today or $600 today. So it was a little bit of an investment, small investment, but an investment nonetheless. Plus the effort I had to take to make the video, edit the video. And then YouTube at that time had a 10 or 15 minute time limit on all videos unless you had established yourself as a regular content creator. So the video I think I made on building a computer was very thorough because I thought there just weren't any thorough videos on building a computer, which is what was my motivation to do all that. And ended up having to do it twice. The first system was AMD, and then I did a second system that's Intel. And once those were done, I just forgot about it. They were all set to monetize when that was available. The videos had to be broken into pieces, into 15-minute pieces, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, because that was all I was allowed. And then eventually YouTube sort of says, okay, you're good enough now that, or you've proven your worthiness to have longer videos. They weren't limitless. I mean, even today they're not limitless, but I think there were two stages. I think you went from 10 or 15 minutes to an hour, and then from an hour it opened it up to like 12 or 13, which is what the limit is now. I think it's 11 or 12. But regardless of that, I got a check for like a little over $100 from Google about a year later, and I thought it was a prank or a scam. I Googled it. It turned out that it says what it was, and oh yeah, those YouTube videos I made, I forgot about them. I didn't realize I could make money from that. I need to make more videos, and started using the same equipment I already invested in to make some more. As more viewers started watching, more people were complaining about the video quality and the audio quality. So I got an HD camera, and even that was pretty cheap. It was probably $200, like a Canon, what do they call it? Like an HF, something, a little tiny camera. And ended up getting two of those. Not at first. No, I think I got two of them because I wanted to be able to do two different angles, two memory cards, two tripods, et cetera, et cetera. Now I was shooting in HD. People complained about the audio, so I got a lapel microphone that was wired into the camera, but it tethered me how far I could walk. It got in the way all the time. So I went through about 3 or 4 wireless cameras. I kept buying cheap $30 wireless lapel. They were awful, a lot of staticky noise and interference. And finally bit the bullet and got a nice Sony used UHF wireless mic pack. And that was all well and good. And then said, I'm filming in the kitchen, filming in the house, and those cameras, those little tiny camcorder cameras, they're not good in low light situations. And the more money you spend on a camera, the bigger the CMOS sensor gets. So these were like 1/3 of an inch CMOS sensors. The Canon XF400 has a full 1-inch sensor on it. and it's more than 3 times. Well, it is 3 times the size, and that allows for better depth of field, better color reproduction, as well as, most importantly, better low light filming. So that was the next upgrade was the Canon G20, and then the Canon, no, I'm sorry, the G10. Yeah, think about this now. I got a G10, then they came out with the G20, which had even better low light. These are still all 1/3 image sensor, CMOS sensors. Then I got the G40, which was the best in low light so far. And then they came out with the G50 recently, and I was eyeballing that, and I realized, after doing some research, I should start broadcasting in 4K. So we went from standard definition to HD to now UHD. And then my upload bandwidth wasn't enough, and my video capture card wasn't going to work. And initially, I was just using a little USB external video capture device for the cameras I was running. And they would overheat, and they just weren't very reliable. And one of the viewers was kind enough to contribute a 4-port HDMI Magewell capture card, which I use to this day, but it's only 1080. So when I dropped the $2,500 on the Canon XF400, cranked it up to 4K, got a Blackmagic 4K capture card, dealt with Blackmagic's terrible support, got it all working, and realized my upload bandwidth wasn't enough. Got the highest bandwidth I can get, which is only 30 megabits a second, and unfortunately that's still not enough for a good 4K broadcast. So I'm not really able to use the camera in 4K yet. And the 4K capture card I've pulled out of the streaming computer because there's no sense. It's just another fan running. I don't need the noise. So I've pulled it and I've put it in my office as sort of an emergency backup capture card for, it's only got one input on it. So I said, okay, I'm looking at the video quality even in 1080, and it's fantastic on this camera, and it gives me room to grow. And I since replaced the tripods. You need a heavier, sturdier tripod than these cheap $20, $30 tripods I was buying. So I got some nice tripods. And then the heads on the tripods, the things the cameras mount to, they're squeaky and jittery. They're not fluid and smooth. And so to do that, you want to get a much nicer tripod head, which is another investment. And these tripod heads, about $130 a piece. But they have a nice fluid motion when I move the camera up or down or swivel it left and right. It's nice and gentle and smooth. It's controlled. And those are by, what's the name of that company that makes these, it's popular, man, it's right on the tip of my tongue. I got to look at the box. Manfrotto, I think, is the name of it. Is it Manfrotto? Yeah, Manfrotto makes the tripod head, and Ravelli makes the tripods I'm using, which are these sturdy, heavy-duty, tall tripods. I mean, if I set this down outside in the wind, I don't have to worry about the wind knocking it over and breaking my camera, which is a whole other problem. Then I was running off batteries for the longest time, and I realized there were extended life batteries. Instead of the battery being this big, the battery's like that big. You can get 4 or 5 hours out of them. But then I needed battery chargers. And Canon, when you buy their cameras, you don't get a battery charger. The Canon battery charger is like $50 for a cheap little piece of plastic. So they have third-party ones that you can buy. But I bit the bullet and I bought the official Canon one for the official Canon battery. And then I bought the aftermarket batteries, which are a quarter of the price, or a sixth of the price. Canon wants about $130 for an extended life battery. You go on Amazon and pick them up for under $30. And I thought, I'll get a charger for that. And the charger was like $20. And that charger still only allowed me to charge one battery at a time, so I got a dual charger for about $160. And now they have dual chargers. B&H Photo, I saw them that will charge the battery much faster, but they're $370 for the charging unit. And it'll do 2 batteries at the same time. Or you can spend $600 and get a unit that does 4 batteries at the same time. And then I realized I don't need to be running off batteries at all. I just need to get the power adapter, which the camera comes with, and plug it in and be done with this, because I used to have to keep getting interrupted with low battery warnings, and sometimes I didn't even catch it in time. Just everything would die. So that's all well and good when I'm out and about or doing my presentations to have those batteries. I still need them. But I used to film with them every day. And so finally, went back to the camera box with all the parts I wasn't using and dug out the power adapters. And with the the current Canon XF400 I'm using now, I've got to get zip ties and zip tie that big power brick to the side of the leg, one of the legs of the tripod, because the cable's not long enough to go from the camera to the floor. And I don't want the weight of that hanging off the end of the camera. So I've just grabbed some zip ties, tied it to one of the legs of the camera, to the tripod rather, and now we're plugged in and we don't have to worry about battery life. Okay, so that kind of gives you the arc of where I was 12 years ago and in all the little steps I've taken. Basically, as the YouTube channel made more money, I was able to buy a better camera. With the better video quality, I got more views, which led to a little bit more money to buy a better camera, et cetera, et cetera. These cameras that I'm using now, well, there's just one. This one arrived the other day. I've got another one, should be coming tomorrow. These were $3,000 when they first came out. Now they're $2,500. What do you get for $2,500? A lot of money for a camera. Certainly, there's no way I could have started my YouTube channel with these cameras. It's something I grew into, and I wouldn't have had $2,500 to spend on a camera back then. Because remember, you still need the memory cards, you still need the battery. Well, I needed a battery charger. You need a tripod. You can get by with the basic tripod head the tripod comes with, but they're all crap. I needed a microphone. I needed a capture card. I needed a computer dedicated for editing the videos I was making long before I was even going live, before I had a capture card, just recording everything in camera, and then going back and looking at it and checking to see if it's acceptable. Things have changed a lot since then. Now, if I want to make a video that I want to edit later, I can actually make the video using the capture card, save the file locally on the computer's hard drive without broadcasting it. And I can see it on the big screen, just like a director watching the, whatever they're filming. And I can adjust the color, and I can put audio filters in, and I can do all that as it's recording live onto the hard drive. Then I can take that file and put it into the editor and edit it. But there's less to edit when I'm watching the content and know when to start and stop. But it's not something I can do by myself. It's something that I have to control while somebody like perhaps Mitch is in front of the camera while I'm doing all that on the side. And it changes the whole dynamic of filmmaking. It's so much easier. But as I mentioned, I still do presentations, and I still go on site and do interviews. And for that, I still need the memory card. I still need the batteries. And upgraded the wireless mics. I was able to get 2 wireless mics thanks to viewers like yourselves that have contributed. John Wilson was a big contributor in that, in helping me to get these microphones. This Canon XF400 has the ability to take 2 microphones at the same time. And each microphone has its own receiver. There's a lot of different ways to do this. I wanted something portable. I wanted something I could take and move around. So I didn't want to have anything large that had to be physically plugged in. So the receivers and the mics take batteries, regular AA batteries, and so I've had to go and get some rechargeable batteries and a charger, or I'd be spending a lot of money in batteries. These batteries will go about 8 hours of broadcast time, and it'll kill off a good set of AA's. So rechargeables were an important investment in order to not only save the landfill, but the last thing I want to do is throw away a battery that still has a charge on it. But also the last thing I want to do is be in the middle of a broadcast and have my audio cut out because I was trying to eke out every little penny out of that AA battery, So rechargeable's the way to go. I can charge them up after every broadcast, and they're always good for 8 to 11 hours. So that's the logic. That's the history of it. If you're thinking of doing this yourself and you want to create a YouTube channel, you can certainly start out with a basic webcam, and there's plenty of podcasting specialty microphones and things that you can purchase to do that sort of thing. If you want to do just an audio podcast, that's the cheapest thing you can do. We were doing Tech Vets long before, I think long before I was doing any video on YouTube. I could be wrong. But doing audio podcasting is much less expensive. And even that, I started out with a relatively inexpensive USB microphone and eventually upgraded to what was the Heil PR40 with an XLR to USB adapter, which was probably in total about $500. And the audio quality, when it's just audio, the audio quality was amazingly different, much, much better. So when it comes to cameras and microphones, the cheaper it is, the cheaper it is. You do get what you pay for in this industry. Now, there is a Canon XF400, and the only difference between those two is the Canon XF400 has an SDI output, which is a more professional video output, which I don't need. I'm not doing that kind of filmmaking. I just need HDMI out, and it'll carry the audio and video through the HDMI cable right into my capture card. And then using the OBS software, I can control color tones, I can control audio filters. There's a lot I can do where I don't have to buy separate hardware, what they would do in traditional filmmaking. So I can get away with some shortcuts here that are good enough. So what do you get in the XF400? First time I'm opening this box. In the very top of the box, there's documentation and probably a warranty card. I guess that's what that is, a registration card. That's a thick book. Now look, I'm not going to go through all the bells, whistles, and features of the camera because you can search on YouTube for the Canon XF400 and you will see people that are much more of an expert in videography and in cameras talk about all the technical details of the camera. I'm not really utilizing any of that. Most of that I'm not really interested in, at least not today. What I want is something simple. I want something that's got good low light, and I want something that enables me to plug into microphones. This does everything I need it to do, and I can upgrade into 4K when my internet service provider is able to offer that service to my home, or I get a studio, whichever comes first, where the bandwidth will be available, then I'm ready to go. So, getting back to what's in the box, turn this around this way. Inside it looks like this, and we can just start taking items out of here, such as the lens hood is here. The lens hood is a lot nicer on this camera than on the previous Canons because what this does, this locks onto the end of the camera. The other ones, they don't lock on, so that you can easily knock them off. So this will twist onto the end of the camera. It goes like about a half turn, and then it locks. And there's a little release lever here to unlock it if you want to take the hood off of it. And it's got a built-in lens cover, which all the other G10, G20, G30, G40 all have that. And you move this little switch, and that opens it up. So it's real easy to keep your lens clean of any dust or fingerprints. And you don't have to worry about where do you put the lens cover, right? Where does it go? So this keeps it all contained, and it's always available. Also in here we've got, this is the Canon battery. To buy this battery separately, this is a BP828 battery. You can look them up on Amazon. I think they're $140 for an actual authentic Canon battery made in Japan. If you want to get a battery made in China that's compatible, they're about $30, $40, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. It is an intelligent battery. The camera has to be able to read it, and if the camera can't read it, like the camera will power on, say you have an unauthorized battery, and power back off. But Amazon's usually really good about the returns. As of January 1st, 2019, the post office won't ship lithium-ion batteries, so I was told. So when you ship anything with a lithium-ion battery, it has to go through UPS or FedEx or somebody other than USPS. This is that power brick I was talking about that I didn't use for a long time. I was just running strictly off batteries. And you see it on this camera, it's a pretty big power brick. And I've got to get a nylon zip tie and just hook it onto one of the legs of the tripod. The way you would charge this battery is you would put the battery into the camera, and you would plug the camera in but leave the camera off. And that will charge the battery in the camera. That's Without a battery charger, that's the way you have to do it. Enclosed is a small remote control, a small battery, the same battery we use on motherboards. That goes in this remote, and this remote has some real basic functions. I don't like to use it, but you can, if you're a one-man band, you can zoom, go to the menu, you can start and stop your recording, playback, a lot of stuff I don't need in live feeds. So I don't use it. So I keep all the spare parts I don't use in the box and throw the box in the garage. And then here's our power cable that plugs into the power brick. Right there. And then under here is the good stuff. So this is going to be the camera itself. It's pretty big and heavy when you compare it to what I used to use. I know there's a way to get it out of here. Yeah. That's it right there. And you'll see it even has a lens cover on it in case you don't want to shoot with the lens hood. But we can take that by pinching the sides just like on a digital SLR. And then we can take this lens hood, and like I said, it goes on about halfway, sort of halfway around, one way or the other. There we go. And that lines up. And then we twist it, and it locks. And it won't come off. You can't just untwist it like you can with the other Canon cameras. Now, you can leave it like this, and you can start filming. This is your, right here where these fingers are. Zoom in, zoom out, right? On the back, your battery's going to go right there. Ideally, you have a tripod head that allows you to take the battery in and out as you need to without, some tripod heads are really long and you have to take the camera off the shoe, which sucks. Menu button is there and you can scroll through your menu options here. You can open up the screen, you can flip it the other way. This has night vision, infrared vision. Very simple buttons. It's not overly complicated like some of those camcorders that have a million buttons on them. I hate that. This is real easy. We've got two shoes up at the top, one here, one here. This is kind of interesting. The SD card, this opens up and it takes two SD cards. And the SD cards then can mirror each other. So if you have an SD card failure, you don't lose all your recordings. And that locks back down. There's holes here because there's a little fan. That's this. To record 4K at 60 frames a second, this thing can get pretty hot. So there's a fan that runs here, and you don't want to block these little vents. I don't hear the fan. It's pretty quiet. Here is a little door you can open up, and this is going to have network connectivity. Also, Wi-Fi is available. That's our HDMI output. That's going to go in the capture card. There's also a USB connector there. And you can always plug a microphone in to the side of the camera, which is what I always did until I got this camera. Because what this camera comes with, what really shines, apart from the fact it's got a much bigger lens, is this piece right here. It's the handle. And the handle's fully optional. You don't have to use it if you don't want to use it. But this handle allows me to plug in two XLR, balanced microphones, and then to control their volume individually, as well as tell the camera where I want my inputs coming from. And that's all built into the handle. But when you use the handle, it takes both of the shoes. So it gives you one back right up here. So if you still need to attach something, it comes with an attachment, a little plastic attachment, which you see in the photo, which allows for like a boom style of microphone to go up there. I never ever use that. So that'll just stay in the box. But just to give you an idea of how simple this is to put together, this is already ready for you to slide this piece on. And you'll see there's a couple of little thumb screws that are captured there at the end. And this is just going to go in the camera like that. It'll slide on, right? And then we just turn these screws on both sides. They're spring loaded, so you have to push down on them as you turn them until they get started. Come on. you certainly want it to be nice and tight because you don't want your handle jiggling or making any noise or coming off, although it would have to slide back to come off. And that makes an electronic connection that hooks up the microphone through the shoe. And now you've got another way to hold the camera, more convenient way. And again, I want to emphasize that large lens. On the side here, you've got a ring that you can turn, and you can have that either control your focus manually when you turn the ring, or you hit the switch, go this way, and it'll control your zoom in and zoom out, in case you don't want to do it up here with this. So you've got two different ways to do that. And so just one ring to rule them all. And then you can set custom buttons to do features like this is a little rotating dial here. And I set that to control my light video gain. If you recall, I was having some difficulties when the video would seemingly get dark for no reason. And I'm digging all through the menus, trying to figure out where that setting is. And I see this option called gain, and I thought that was for audio. Turns out it's for video. It's video gain, and I can make the room brighter than it actually is in reality. I can make it appear brighter on camera. And so without having to get into all the menus, if I quickly want to adjust my gain, I can just roll that one way or the other, and I can instantly see the gain increasing and decreasing very simply. They have a thing called an ND filter. It's sort of like if you're shooting in a real bright sunlight, you can use I don't shoot really in bright sunlight, so it's nothing I ever use. This also has a built-in stereo microphone, which I won't use either. And of course, it's still small enough and light enough to hold in your hand and film. And certainly the quality is a lot better than what you're going to get out of your phone. Now that being said, you can certainly shoot by looking at the screen, which has a little protective cover over it we can remove. Come on, there we go. And this is a touch screen, I believe. I do everything, yeah, it is a touch screen. This is a touch screen. And then if you want to save your battery life, like when I'm on stage, and I might be on stage for a couple hours, the camera's sitting on a tripod behind the audience. There's nobody operating it. There's no reason to have this open because it just eats up my battery life. So I can close this and pull this out, and that activates this little LCD screen inside, which uses much less battery. It'll increase my battery life by using this. And then this also tilts up and down, and it's got a little diopter, what they call a diopter, to adjust so that you can see it in focus if you everybody's eyes are a little different. Maybe you wear glasses, and you'll see it's just you'll see that little piece go in and out, and that allows you to see in focus, just like a pair of binoculars has a little dial. It's a diopter, same thing as this. And the LCD screen doesn't turn on inside of here until you pull this unit out. So I push that back in. If this is pushed in and the door is closed, I think the camera goes into a standby mode. So you have to have one open or the other. At least that's how it was with my other cameras. This is your main record on off, sort of when you're recording in the camera. But basically for what I'm doing to broadcast through a capture card, I have to tell it I don't want all that information on the screen, on the battery life and minutes left on the battery. That's typically the stuff you see inside of here. I tell it not to broadcast that through the HDMI port because I don't want you guys seeing it. It's just distracting and it's unnecessary. All the Canon cameras I've had do that. You can turn that on or off. It's fairly lightweight, and as you can see, I'm shooting with the XF400 now, and you can see that the clarity, the depth of field is so much better than in past videos. And to give you an idea of one of the original cameras, the first HD camera that I was shooting with here on YouTube, I still have it. And it still uses the same batteries, by the way. So all the battery investment I made on these cameras work all the way up until the XF400. Even though they will fit in here, the camera won't accept it. It'll give you an error message. But these camera batteries work backwards to the older models. But this, just to give you an idea, this is my first, and it's very dusty. This is a Vixia HF, I don't know. I think I bought these refurbished. Vixia HFM301. And look at the size difference, right? There's that one. Look at the size of the lens. Now look at this one. And it definitely makes a big difference. Like I said, low light performance, the speed of the focus. When I shoot with Subaru mic, I like to take this, and you guys probably can't even tell. But this lets me get down in tight spaces. I can get my hand in. And this is your zoom in and zoom out right there with my first finger. And your record button's right there at the thumb, battery's right there, your screen's right here. Once again, microphone input on the red, SD card goes right there. I mean, as far as a simple camera goes, these were fantastic. I think I bought these refurbished for, they were probably, I want to say they were $120 a piece. I mean, they were cheap, refurbed. Nothing wrong with them. I was buying all my cameras refurbished. I can't find any XF400s refurbished. They're still too new. And by too new, I mean, it's already been out for like 2 years. So yeah, I went from that, and then there's some sort of evolutionary larger cameras that eventually work our way up to this. This is about the same size as a can of soda, I think. We have a can here, maybe I can show you. Just to give you a reference point or a point of perspective. I mean, it's relatively tiny. The can is actually larger, isn't it? The can is taller and wider. That's how little that is. And for as small as it is, you know, there's no infrared on it. It's got a little light up in the front, which I can never remember how to turn on. You've got manual and automatic up here on the top for controlling the camera's features. I'm telling you, these new cameras, you put them on automatic, and they're fantastic. The automatic settings are so much more intelligent than they used to be. And then what we can do, this battery should have some charge on it. Make sure this thing works. That's how the battery goes in. There's a little release lever here on the bottom. All the Canon cameras that I have all operate that same way. And let's turn it on for the first time. Let's make sure this thing works. I'm sure it doesn't have a full charge, but it should have something on there. We'll flip this switch to camera mode, and we'll open the lens hood, and nothing is happening. So this switch up here is your playback camera mode or off. That tells me this battery is probably flat out dead. And if that's the case, I need to put a charged battery in it. Let me see if I've got one that will work. I should have one that'll work. Let me move this one into a charger. And these batteries will take a couple hours to charge, so be prepared for that. Where's my battery charger? With my official Canon batteries, I like to use my official Canon charger. I hate the idea of potentially damaging a battery with a third-party charger, knowing how much money these cost to replace. So I like to use the third-party chargers with the third-party batteries, even though everything is supposed to be compatible. I just don't trust it. All right, here's a battery for my G40. I think the G40 battery will work. I'm not certain. I know it'll fit. Let's see what happens. It's open. Turn that on. Light goes green. It's powering up. Did I open the lens? The lens open. Wants me to set up the date and time. And again, I can feed out this entire screen to you guys. If I hook a cable up to this, you can see this full screen in the capture card. But for right now, just to get through this quickly, we're December, I'm just touching the screen here. Today's the 18th. You'll see the default date is 2017. That's the year this camera was released, I believe. So we'll switch it to 2019. It is 3:54 Phoenix time. I should go this way. So 3:54 p.m. So not letting me switch AM, PM. So I guess I gotta go this way then. There it goes. And you can change your date format. You know, we Americans, we do month, day, year. Or you can go to a 24-hour format. Hit OK. And then I can get into the menuing system. It's telling me I don't have a memory card. I need to throw a memory card in here. So there's a red notification, no memory cards installed. The life of the battery's up there. And we're probably in, if we can read really, really closely, it tells us what shooting mode we're in. I don't want to be in 4K mode because I won't be able to broadcast it out to you. So I have to go to the menu here. And where's it at? It's been a while. We want to go to, maybe it's this one, function. See, that's that gain I was telling you about. And the gain can really brighten the room up. It's really cool. Auto white balance, you leave that on because it does a really good job. There's a backlight. You can, it makes the back of the, whatever you're filming sort of brighter. And in certain circumstances, that can make a huge difference. This option here is your, I think multiple, you can have 2 focus points and you can set it manually. And then there's magnification, which when you're setting your focus, it can be hard to see on this little screen. So it magnifies something far away, big on your screen, and you put that in focus, and then when it sets it back to normal, you know you're in focus. Sometimes things look like they're in focus on the smaller screen. You get them on the big screen and realize you're slightly out of focus the whole time, and it's really annoying. So magnification helps with that when you're shooting on a small screen. Okay, turn magnification on, yeah. As far as resolution goes, I want to change this to 1080p. And I will do the highest, I won't do 60 frames. We don't need that. You want to do 60 frames if you want to do like slow motion videos, or you want to slow it down for a dramatic effect, or you're shooting sports, something like that. For me, we don't need that. It's just extra bandwidth. And not everybody that's watching has a lot of bandwidth to begin with, and it's not fair to do to them. But we'll all get there. You know, we'll all have better bandwidth eventually. Now here, we just can go through all the different options, and you just keep swiping to the left as you go across. For example, at the top, it's got a picture of a camera, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screens. And then once you get through that, it moves the top thing over to the next. And now we're going to do a microphone section, audio, and resolution was right there. And resolution is defaulted at 3840 by 2160, and I'll take it to 1920 by 1080, and there's different bit rates. The higher the bit rate, the more room it's going to consume on your SD card, on your memory card. But also, the more video content there is, the more video data per frame. It's personal preference. YouTube's basically compressing the heck out of anything anyway, but I want to give YouTube the best feed possible, so that way when YouTube compresses it, it's just overall better. That sets the resolution. I can hit the little X up here to close that out. And there's lots of other little bells, whistles, and features. Initialize your memory card when you put it in there. You put 2 memory cards in, tell it you want to mirror one to the other. You can see I've got audio working on that as I talk. That's the built-in microphone on the camera where you see the lines moving back and forth. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And I just can't say enough good about this camera. I really, really like it a lot. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted 3 of them, but 3 of them is $7,500. And luckily, I've got some amazing people in the community, and with the contributions, you know, it was sort of my goal to one day get there. I got there pretty darn quickly. And you may hear me start referring to the cameras by certain names. There's a gentleman named Peter who has contributed that makes a camera purchase like this possible. There's a gentleman named Dave who contributed that makes a camera like this possible much sooner than it would have been waiting for YouTube revenues to add up to be enough. And so I already have the tripods, the tripod heads, and I'll be able to do 3 camera, all with the same lighting. When you shoot with different cameras, they all have different white balances, different size. In my case, you would see a massive difference going from this camera to this camera. And heck, I can show you. I'll show you the difference. Again, I can use the same battery here. Just pull that lever, battery comes out. There's also a firmware update probably available, I'll check it, that improves the camera's focus performance, and I need to apply that. I'll have to decide if I want to show you how that's done. It's not going to be very useful to most of you. So this we'll just plug in here, and then I need an HDMI cable. I forgot, where does it go? On this camera it goes on this side. There's a little door that opens. And we have a little micro HDMI. They're all the same micro HDMI on all the Canon cameras. And so I go on Amazon and I buy these micro HDMI to regular HDMI cables. So I don't need any adapters. I think this is a 25-foot cable if I'm not mistaken. That gives me some walking room to take the camera and move it around, or to put the tripod further away. And we'll just plug this end into the capture card. And remember, we're in 1080 mode now. And the camera I'm plugging in, 1080 is not all the same. There's massive differences based on the lens and based on the processing of the image. And the cheaper cameras, and let's face it, there's some no-name brand cameras on Amazon that are like $100 that come with everything you need. And they're from names I've never heard of before, and they're almost like at a level of a cell phone quality. In fact, I don't know why you just wouldn't use a cell phone rather than use one of those. But I would steer clear of them, and if you really wanted to, stream on YouTube Live or something, just get yourself a nice Logitech or a Microsoft web camera. So that's the other end of it here. And that battery is so huge. That cracks me up. So we'll plug this in, right like so. Okay, so that's what that looks like. And then we can open this up, turn it on, and I'll just kind of, oh, it wants me to set the date. It's been such a long time since it's been turned on. So I'll just go back. This is the same exact menuing screen. Works a little bit different, but it's really very similar. And you'll see the default date is 2011 on this camera, which gives you an idea. Usually those default dates are about the time they were released. Move that up to 2019. And then, of course, back to the time is 4:02 now. This isn't really that important. This is for time stamping the dates of the files that you're saving, so you have everything organized. So that's what I'm seeing. Chris is going to complain there's no memory card, but for live streaming, I don't need it. And so I'm just going to hold this back over here, and let's go to input 2. We'll take a look at the difference in quality. So now, you might notice there's a color change. And remember I said all that information on the screen? It's got an intelligent focus. It sees my face, and it's focusing where the square box appears. Up at the top right corner, you'll see it's got 285 minutes of approximate life on that huge battery. And down below that, it's letting me know in red that there's no memory card, and my recording mode is SP. Some of the cameras from Canon have these names for different quality recording modes. Like if you remember VHS, VCRs, you had LP and SP and SLP for, the same tape could be used for 2 hours of video, 4 hours, or 6 hours. And of course, the quality suffered the longer, depending on if it mattered to you or not. Some people are more sensitive to that. But take a look at the color quality, take a look at the lighting, and then we can even compare these side by side. If I take this camera and put it over here, did I move the right thing? Apparently not, because it's not moving. Camera 1, move that over here. And then camera 2, we'll move that. Back to camera 1. Kind of hard to squish everything on the screen here. Bluetooth thing a little bigger. All right, so same. See what I'm saying? Look at the difference in the clarity. Now, there are some manual adjustments I can make to this camera that can help that a little bit, but this camera is doing it all automatically. So you can see this little camera's not bad. I mean, to pick one of these up cheap, it's more than adequate for live streaming. Certainly my depth of field on it is nowhere near as good as the other camera. And of course, the lighting is a lot darker, especially the background. Look at the background behind me. But the focus is good, and you know, the camera is surprisingly good for as tiny as it is. It's incredibly sharp, and like I said, I use this when I drive over. Like if you ever see a video where I'm driving my car and it drives over the camera, I drive over this one because if it gets hit, it's a cheap camera. And when I go to Subaru Mike's and I need to get my hands down in the engine bay where he's working on it, these other cameras are they're too big. So this camera is a lot smaller. A GoPro would be even better, but it kind of fisheyes a little bit. And of course, the GoPro lens is so tiny, it does require a lot of light. And when you're down in an engine bay, it's typically very dark. Anyway, that's the difference between the two cameras. And that's why I wouldn't want to have, let's say, camera 1 be this camera and camera 2, because the minute I switch from camera 1 to camera 2, you immediately see a complete different color tone difference, lighting difference. And as the day goes on and the windows, you know, start to get dark around me, the lighting will further change. So even if I manually adjust the white balance on this camera, I will have to continually do it throughout the broadcast, which is an interruption. It's a pain in the butt. And there's just no one set it, forget it kind of setting without having this big difference between the color matching, depth of field, brightness, etc. All right, let's go back to full screen on that. So this little camera is telling me, since I haven't used it in a few minutes, it wants to save the battery. It thinks I'm distracted. And that's another feature I had to turn off on these cameras. It beeps and lets you know it's going to turn off in a minute, which is fine. I'm going to let it do that because it's time for us to go back to the main camera. I'm done with this one anyway. And you should see that's going to, you know, it's alerting us there. Same thing you saw. It beeps, and then it's going to shut off. And that's another one of those settings you got to remember to turn that off. If you're live streaming, you forgot to turn that off, and it's happened, it shuts me down in the middle of a stream. So the stream is still recording, it's just recording no audio or video. And then I have to go and turn the camera back on, go in. And as soon as I turn it back on, I'm still streaming, so anything I do on screen, it's very unprofessional, and you have to see me go into the menu system and turn that thing off. So it's just one more little thing I don't have to worry about with this camera. Well, I guess I don't worry about it with this camera because it's plugged in, now that I think about it. If I plug this one in, I always ran these off batteries. So, and the batteries I was using were the stock batteries, which are a third the size. You know, they don't stick out like that, which this is why I find it amusing. And I know there's a release for it. Oh, the release is right there. So pull that, and then the battery comes out. So where we were and where we are currently should be interesting to look back on this and see how big and heavy that is compared to the new 8K cameras we'll be eventually getting into in a few years once bandwidth, you know, we have 4K TVs, and yet Cox Cable Television out here in Phoenix doesn't offer any 4K content in 2019. And what you watch on YouTube and Netflix in 4K is so compressed, it's not really 4K. I mean, it's kind of 4K, but it's not. Oh, I see a dog nose. What's up, Jimmy? You look like a shark. Doo-doo, doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Good boy. All right, guys, so that is the Canon XF400. That's the basics. If you want the technical information, just search here on YouTube for XF400 review. And there are some very intelligent video enthusiasts and even professional videographers reviewing the camera, comparing it to other manufacturers, telling you what they like about it, what they don't like about it, if you want that level of detail. This is just the most basic sort of introduction to show you what are the things I'm looking for, why is it I'm so excited about it, and when you consider what I had and where I came from and how much I've already spent, and every time I get a different camera, I have to learn a different menuing system. Like it may have the same options between the Canon G10 and the G20, but they might be in different places. They might be swapped around. So by having 3 of all the same camera, I know exactly where all the menu settings are, and they all need to be set exactly the same. And then that way, when I switch cameras, you guys can't tell. It's more professional. It's more like what you're accustomed to seeing on television. It's one more step in the right direction of getting more angles, better video quality, and I still have to hone the audio. I haven't had time to really refine the audio yet. Since I got the new lapel mics, I just haven't had time. So I still have a little improvement on the audio to go, but the audio will always be controlled by one camera, and then the other cameras will automatically synchronize to that in OBS because it's all live, and we're just going to take the audio to keep it main audio coming from the main camera, and cameras 2 and 3, where Dave and Peter will be video only. We won't carry audio out from those. That's how that works. Then, of course, if I put the green screen behind me, all kinds of fun ridiculousness can happen. So very quickly, if anybody has any questions on the camera, we'll take that now, and then I have to get Mike's computer shipped off here relatively quickly. Let me just check in on the chat room here. So I'm sorry I haven't been looking at the chat this whole time, so if you've had any questions, I haven't seen them, please repost them now, and then barring that, we'll wrap it up. Do I have fiber internet? No, that should be pretty clear. A couple of contributions came in. I didn't see any of these, so I'll give shouts out to everybody. Steve Dickens contributed $5. He says, I built 2 computers thanks to you. Keep up the great videos. Gio Johnson's contributed $5. He says, Merry Christmas, Kerry. Use where most needed. Jim Innes contributed $5. He says, I'm late again. Merry Christmas all. 5 for Lyle and Jimmy's Biscuits. Blue Starline contributed €2. He says, Happy holidays, Kerry. Please have a Coke on me. Amadi has contributed $2. And LOL70721 contributed $2 and says, your videos have helped me build my gaming PC. Thank you. Right on, guys. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. And I'm going to look to see if there are any questions that have come in with regards to the camera. People are saying they're only getting 480. If you're only getting 480, you have to click the little gear icon down in the bottom right corner of the video. And then that gear icon, there's an option that says quality with a little arrow pointing to the right. It probably says 480 for you. And you'll just click on that. And that goes for every video you'll ever watch. Check to see what the highest quality is. If the highest quality is 480, well, then that's all you're going to get. But you might have defaulted into 480 for some reason, and you just need to go there and select 720 or 1080 or 2160 or 1440 or whatever being offered to you. You're not going to see 1440 or 2160 in this video. As I mentioned, I don't have the upload bandwidth to live stream at 4K, but I can produce 4K for edited videos. So you might see that on edited stuff. Mike says, Kerry, good review, buddy. Hoping you're feeling well. I'm at RNB today. I don't know what RNB is, but thank you for the well wishes. And Amar says, hello from Russia. Welcome in. Quiet Dad says, I contributed through PayPal. Right on. Thank you, Quiet Dad. Are you going to be live tomorrow or Friday? I intend to be live tomorrow and Friday. If I can be, I have a ton of stuff to film still. I have the RGB build. I've got to finish it. So my goal is to continue the RGB build tomorrow. Brendan Looney just contributed £2. Thank you, Brendan. IAFSCX says, Happy Hanukkah from Israel. Thank you. Happy Hanukkah to you. Is there Wi-Fi connectivity on the camera? Yes, I don't use it. It does have Wi-Fi. I think it even says right on the box. 4K, MP4, SDXC memory cards, Wi-Fi certified, HDMI. I might play with it someday, but for now I don't have it on the network. Don't need it on the network. Paul 1961 says, I'm officially running my new Ryzen build. Right on, Paul. I was just playing with the little streaming computer, the mini ITX I put together in the Ncase M1 a while back. And through a BIOS update and new chipset drivers, it's just a Ryzen 5 2400G. It feels incredibly fast. I don't know why. Something about it since putting those updates on. Just, it's very snappy. It seems too fast for what it is. Very impressed with the performance of that 2400G because I was thinking I should replace that. It's kind of old. Probably put a Ryzen 7 in it, you know. The Ryzen 5 2400G, that thing is fast. So I'm impressed with it. It's taken a while for BIOS updates and things to come out and driver updates to clearly some issues have been addressed because I am noticing like even the streaming computers running so much better since the latest BIOS and chipset drivers. So just perhaps a victim of being a early adopter, I think. But they're starting to shine well right now. What's the purpose of an internet connection on the camera? The idea is to get the content off of the camera so that you can edit it. And so instead of taking the memory card out of the camera, putting it into a memory card reader into a USB port on a computer, you can transfer the file over your internet directly from the camera without grabbing the memory card, like we call it the sneaker net, which is where you would take a disk with files on it and carry it over to another computer. When you have a network, you can transfer the file a lot faster and a lot further by the push of a button instead of sneaker net, which is pretty obvious what that means, right? I think it is. Hamed Git has contributed £2. Thank you, Hamed. Okay, other questions about the camera. I will handle those right now. Otherwise, I need to wrap up and go. So just camera, if you have any camera or internet streaming related questions, microphones, that's what I'm taking today. Photo Mix Media says it's true about the color and white balance. Even sensors that come out from the production line back to back will render the color white balance differently. When I would imagine a name like Photo Mix Media, you know more about it than I do. I was well into photography as a hobby for a long time, but never really had a lot of time to spend. Like I'd spend like a week or two and then I wouldn't touch it for a few months and then I couldn't remember all the dials and settings, you know, aperture versus f-stops and stuff like that. I used to know all of it and it just kind of faded. And now I just put everything on automatic and I'm very, very happy. And the newer cameras, when set to auto, are doing an amazing job. It's sort of like the new 10-speed transmissions that are coming with sports cars can shift faster than a manual. Used to always be if you wanted the fast version, you wanted the manual. Not anymore. Those automatic transmissions can shift faster than any human ever could. And so your 0 to 60 time on many of these modern cars is faster with the automatic transmission. It's getting that way with cameras. It used to be you had to just, you know, expect to adjust everything by hand to set your white balance and do all that stuff. Now the automatic settings are amazingly good. I wouldn't say they're better than what a human being could do who knows what they're doing, but I don't know what I'm doing and I don't want to learn it. Like I don't want to set my white balance on the cameras. I've been through that. I didn't like it. And I've forgotten how to do it since then. I don't want to revisit it. Not when auto does it all for me and does it really well. Do I have a gyroscope for balancing the camera? No, the camera is, you would need something called a gimbal if you want to have the camera self-level. And gimbals, you're probably looking between, on a cheap gimbal for a camera this size, you're probably looking around $600 to $800. And it's got its own batteries. You know, if the motors on the gimbal get loud, you're going to hear them. And then, of course, you need a camera operator for that. And I don't have a regular camera operator. And you can't just pick it up and use it. It's not like it's intelligent enough to you just pick it up and it just levels us up. You have to learn how to be a gimbal operator. You have to know how to move the camera in a proper way that it optimizes the efficiency and operation of the motors, the X and Y motors, or the X and Y axis motors that keep the camera level no matter what you do. Again, you can YouTube search on the word gimbal, and you'll see some videos where a guy's like standing in front of a mirror with his digital SLR on a gimbal, and he swings the gimbal around like this, but the image stays straight. But you can't just grab, like if you tried to replicate that, it would move all over. You have to learn the finesse once you get the feel for it, which doesn't take a long time, but does take a little bit of practice. And of course, the more you do it, the easier it gets. If I was doing a lot of videos where I was walking with the camera or running with the camera, you would definitely want a gimbal. It keeps everything smooth. It kind of flows like water instead of jittery. And these stabilization, these automatic stabilization systems are electronic. They're not very good. I understand Sony has a little camcorder, I believe, that has a little gimbal built inside of the camera, built onto the lens. It can't move that much, you know, so the image stabilization, I guess, is improved, but it's still not going to replace an actual gimbal. But we don't need one here for what we're doing. And you got to remember, when you use a gimbal, you want to be fully on battery. I can't have cables coming off of the camera going into a capture card. The camera, you know, it'll pull on the camera one side or add extra weight, and it throws the gimbal or keeps the balance tilted to one side. So then you need, like, if I was going to broadcast live with a gimbal, I would need a wireless HDMI connection to the capture card, and the camera would have to be on batteries, and the microphone would need batteries, and then the wireless HDMI sending and receiving unit would also need batteries. It gets complex, and it also adds weight to the camera for whoever's going to hold that thing, which may not be much after a couple of minutes, but it gets heavier and heavier the longer you have to hold it. Do you have enough bandwidth over Wi-Fi to upload your video in a reasonable time? I've never done it. I don't record in the camera anymore, and unless I'm, you know, on location somewhere. For the most part, the camera's just powered on, and it does its focusing, and everything else is controlled by the capture card. So everything's recorded locally to the hard drive immediately. When I do in a presentation or something like that, I will still old school take the memory card out, put it into a memory card reader, put that in the USB port, and transfer the files, because that's faster than me configuring the network and then figuring out, you know, on the camera, and figuring out how to use it. So it's ultimately just about time, what's going to be faster. Now, if I would take the time to learn how to do that, maybe that will ultimately be easier. Maybe that would be a good investment. I just don't do it very often, so it's not a big deal to me. It's not a feature I need yet, but it's nice to know it's there if I ever want to use it or ever require it, if my needs should change. Is the camera heavy? Camera's not very heavy at all, but when you start adding things to it, like it doesn't have a battery in it right now, we don't have microphone attachments on it right now, that's probably about, it's probably about, we'll call it 5 pounds. I'd say 4 or 5 pounds, the way it is right now. And, you know, with the handle, it's nothing. Or even holding it this way, it's still fairly lightweight. The heavier the camera is, the steadier you'll probably hold it too. Lighter cameras, it's easy to kind of flop them around. With a heavier camera, you might even use 2 hands. That helps keep the camera steady, takes the weight off of your arm, and you end up with much smoother video anyway. What was the model of the little old camera? Just rewind this video. This video has DVR mode on. You can rewind that. We use Wi-Fi to laptop to live stream through OBS. Wi-Fi from what? The laptop's built in. I don't understand. Am I on Ethernet all the time? The streaming computer is hardwired into the router in order to prevent any interference that can come with a Wi-Fi connection, because it would interfere with the stream. I did have a high-end Wi-Fi card in the streaming computer, and I would unintentionally broadcast on Wi-Fi and not realize I did it. And every once in a while there'd be a glitch and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I ended up pulling the Wi-Fi card out, so that forces me to make sure I remember to put the Ethernet cable in. You're always going to be more secure, faster, and more reliable with a cable than over wireless. If I were somewhere where I didn't have access to run a cable, I'll run wireless when I have to. If I don't have to, I would rather do without the headaches of, especially when you're doing a 2 or 3 hour stream, neighbors doing things, turning on microwaves or whatever other wireless devices. Even here in the house, things can activate that could interfere with the Wi-Fi. Not necessarily drop it, but affect its performance, and then that results in dropped frames and maybe lag or stutter. So, like I said, it was working really, really well, surprisingly well. I didn't even notice sometimes when I was on Wi-Fi. But if there was a problem, it was often Wi-Fi related, and it usually happened after things had been going for a while. So I just prefer wired. I just temporarily string a wire across the floor, and I keep it coiled up by the router, and all I have to do is uncoil it and plug it in. And then I have a reliable and fast upload bandwidth on the stream. Watching the video, you can go Wi-Fi, who cares? But streaming it, I would only go Wi-Fi if I had to. Is Wi-Fi bad for you? Wi-Fi is just another radio signal. So if you've been listening to AM, FM radio your whole life, or used to have a TV with antennas on it, or the police that broadcast on their radios, or the airplanes that talk to the towers, it's all the same. It's all radio signals. That's all it is. So if one's bad for you, then the other should be bad for you too. And you're being bombarded with TV and radio signals your whole life ever since you've been born. And Wi-Fi doesn't have the power of those signals. The Wi-Fi power is very low power compared to a transmitter for AM, FM radio or television. So logically, if it is bad for you, then stopping Wi-Fi still doesn't stop AM, FM radio, television, airplanes, emergency services, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What do you think about Steadicam? Again, if you have a camera operator and you're on the go, Steadicams are amazing. But for what I'm doing, it's certainly not required. I wouldn't really need it in a kitchen. Does the camera have electronic image stability? Yes, yeah. I don't use it. But again, the camera sits on a tripod, so it doesn't really need any stabilization. That's for a camera in motion. So Drivco says you have a really nice camera there. Yeah, I think so. I think it's the best camera I've ever shot with. So I should have a third camera arriving. So we'll have 3 matching cameras. And then the other thing that's great about that is if I need to go do a presentation, I don't have to tear this setup down. I can grab another camera and another tripod and go do the presentation without completely changing the configuration of what I've got set up here. Furthermore, if I do get a studio in the coming year, I can have a camera at the studio while leaving 2 cameras here. And if the studio were to get burglarized, or if the camera would fall and drop, I'm not out of business. I could still, use one of the spare cameras. I mean, in a worst case scenario, I could fall back to this, right? I mean, if I was desperate. But ideally, we want to keep moving forward as much as possible and make sure we have contingency plans. And if I bring somebody here for an interview, as you've seen before, I've done 3 camera setups here in the house before, and I would very much like to start making that more frequent. I'd like to be able to have a center camera, a right camera, and a left camera, and be able to switch between them with the push of a button. And that is an alternative to having a cameraman. having multiple cameras versus having one camera that a guy moves around with. If you don't have a guy to move around with the camera, then you need multiple cameras. And then you need an easy way to control them without interfering with the broadcast or with the content. If you zoom, do the images shake? Not if it's on the tripod, they don't. But if the tripod's being bumped or, no, it doesn't. And the zoom on this is very smooth. And you can even control the zoom speed. You can make it the default, when I push the button, again, I can turn the ring and adjust the zoom by hand, or I can hit the button and let the motor do it. And the motor in the menuing system has options to make that motor go the zoom faster or slower, which I think is a really nice touch because everybody's got their own preferences. But no, the zoom on this is very smooth. John Walter says, I love your mentality in regards to business. Well, thanks, John. Listen, if you're relying on a piece of equipment to do your job, don't go cheap on it. Like if you're a delivery driver, don't buy the cheapest car. If you're somebody who dictates or you type for a living, get yourself a nice keyboard, spend a little money. And furthermore, if it's your main source of income, get a spare keyboard. Get a matching one so that you have no downtime. If that keyboard breaks, you can quickly unplug it, plug another one in, and get back to work. This isn't a game for me. This is, I'm trying to make it a primary source of income. If I can do YouTube for a living, it certainly beats the stress that comes with doing technical work for companies when production goes down and they're losing money, all the pressure's on me. So YouTube's got a lot less pressure. It's got other challenges, but it's not that kind of pressure. And if it's something I'm serious about, then I want to make sure I have good quality equipment to do what I'm able to do to the best of my ability. There are cameras out there for $10,000. There's cameras out there for $250,000. I don't need those. And at the same time, this was fine. This was a good way to start, to test YouTube, to see if it was worth putting any more money in. Remember, out of pocket, I started about $500 out of pocket and didn't see $100 in return on that for a year. So I was still upside down $400 plus all the time and effort to make, edit, post, title, thumbnail the video with the video description, the tags. It's a lot of work for very little return, only to have people jump on YouTube and tell me what an idiot I am or complain about the video quality or the audio quality when they don't understand how much money and time and effort went into making it. There are people that do appreciate it, but it's really frustrating because if somebody doesn't like something, they can click it off. And I would never know they were there. Why they think it's important to tell me what they think when I don't know who they are, what you think matters to me if I know who you are. If you're my friend, if you're somebody I look up to, if you're another content creator and you've got content better than mine, you've got more subscribers to me, I'm interested in what your opinion is. But if you're some random who came in and clicked and said, you suck, I don't know who you are. What do I care? Why do you think I care? And so that is one of the downsides to put yourself out there publicly with free videos. When people get things for free, quite often they perceive that as having no value. And yet when people pay for video content, like there are countless videos people sell on TV, exercise videos and videos on different topics that people charge for. Say, if you want to watch these videos, you got to pay for them. Those people, if they have a complaint, it's justified in the sense that, hey, I want my money back. But there's nothing that's being stolen from you, or there's no way you're being ripped off when you're watching free content that you voluntarily chose to watch. You could just as easily click it off. So this idea that people feel it's important when they don't know who the creator is, the creator doesn't know who they are, and yet they feel it's important to say, let me tell you what my opinion is. You weren't asked, and your opinion doesn't matter. And what's even more insulting is when the people who are so critical have no content themselves. And at least, if my content is crappy, at least I've got content. At least I'm doing something. And anybody who's doing something in my book is not as crappy as the person who's not doing anything and is just complaining about what other people are doing. So that is a challenge that I will try to address in 2020, which may result in requiring the videos to be like, or some of the videos to have exclusive subscriber content only, because I know people who pay for them won't do that. Because if they do, as far as I'm concerned, they're justified. If you paid money for something and you didn't get what you feel like you were promised or what you were expecting, then I can give you a refund, and you and I can go separate ways. But to come in with free content and just complain about it, I don't know how to put a stop to that. So it's the same content. Somebody else will say, hey, this turned my life around, and somebody else will say, that's crap. Why people feel the need to tear other people down is just sad. It's really sad. And like I said, especially when you click on their name and see they have no content. They've done nothing, and they're insulting somebody who's doing something, and they're saying you don't do it well enough when they haven't done anything. So who are you? By the way, who are you? And what's going on in your head? You think I woke up this morning and was like, gee, I wonder what Fly Guy 23 thinks of my videos. Oh, he doesn't like them. I guess I'll stop making them then. Like, what do you think the person's going to do when they read that? What are you hoping to accomplish? What's going to happen? Are they going to? I think I'm beating a dead horse here, but you see what I'm getting at. Like, what do you think the end result of that's going to be? Just creating an enemy. You won't change anything. And oftentimes, if I even start to read a comment that starts off negative, I delete it without reading it. I wouldn't even give that person the satisfaction of reading it. So they can waste their time writing a book. I just hit one button and it's gone. But it sure would be nice if I didn't have to do that. And it sure would be nice if people were supportive to each other. And if you, don't like what you're seeing, make it yourself and show people how it's done. Because the karma in that is there'll be some other jerk that tells you you're an idiot. And then you'll get to see what that feels like after you put all the time, money, and effort into it. So anyway, it's taken, to reiterate, apart from those challenges, which occur every day, putting yourself out there in the public for free, it's taken this long to grow the community to this size and to afford, cameras like this. It hasn't happened overnight. It's been a slow, steady growth and a very slow, steady reinvestment back into the channel. And over time, as I mentioned, my goal is to be able to do that full time. I certainly have a lot of videos I want to make. I don't have enough time to make them. But to get there, I definitely need good quality equipment and know how to use it, have it configured so that as that opportunity arises, as we talked about the other day, I'm ready. You can have opportunity and not be ready, and you can be ready and have no opportunity. These two things have to come together. And the general order of events is you have to be ready first. Then the opportunity comes, and then you can seal the deal and let that rocket take off, hopefully. So I appreciate everybody who's joining me on this little journey. We've got brand new viewers. I've got viewers that have been with me for the whole 10, 12 years I've been on. There's a small number of them still around. And that's what's powering this. That's what's motivating it. So I thank you guys for that. Even though I tend to focus a lot on the negatives, there's much less negative today than there used to be. And part of that is through weeding out those folks and identifying the supporters by turning their names in blue. You'll see a lot of names in blue here. And those people have shown to be wonderful examples of the community that we're creating here. And I hope that you'll be a part of it. And I hope that if your name isn't in blue there, I hope it will be soon. And it just happens through your participation here in the channel, showing that you're supportive and kind to other people. And it's really no competition of who's smarter than anybody. It's really just about not being a jerk. So if you can prove over a short period of time that you're regular and not a jerk, that you are regular. I didn't say you're irregular. It doesn't matter. As long as you're not a jerk. We'd love to see this community grow to be 1,000 times its size. And we'll just look one more time through the chat for any questions I might have missed. I get on that topic. It's hard for me to get off of it. What do you recommend for a capture card? I really like that 4-port capture card. Today, Elgato's 4K 60 frame per second capture card is on sale for $199.99. The price yesterday was $273 at Amazon. yesterday, 24 hours ago, that capture card was $273. Today at Amazon, it's $199. That's the Elgato 4K capture card. And you don't have to broadcast 4K. It'll broadcast up to 4K. So if you only have a 1080 camera, you can set it to 1080 and record in 1080. I think that's the best deal right now. $200, it's internal. You can always use an external USB. You could always use a USB web camera. You can even use your cell phone camera if you wanted to. What's the worst camera I've ever used? There was a video, somebody loaned me one of the original GoPros. It was awful. The colors were all off. It was just, I was trying to do like a point of view computer build, and it was making people nauseous, and everything had a yellow tint, and it didn't really have any good controls. The GoPros today, like the GoPro Hero 8s and stuff, are much, much better video quality, and you can monitor them as well, which I couldn't do with the early, but they loaned it to me, and I think I had it a year before I sent it back. And that was, again, not live streaming that. It was all edited together, and it's tough to watch. It was a better idea in my head than what it turned in the final product turned out to be. Mark Y., thanks for your kind words. I appreciate that very much. Brian Thompson says, Carrie, you inspired me. Right on. Well, that's what I hope to do. Can you make a quick tip video on capture cards, what they are for? Well, my channel isn't really about how to make a channel. It's not about how to live stream. This is sort of every once in a while, when there's significant changes to what's happening and when there's been a number of new viewers since the last time I did it, I try to make a video where I kind of address how I do it. But there are YouTube channels that are there about how to make good video content, how to live stream, what equipment to buy. And everybody, there's a lot of different ways to do it. If you want to use a mixer, if you want to use webcams, you want to use cell phones, there's not any one way. And when it comes to capture cards, as far as I am concerned, that Magewell 4-port HDMI capture card is the best thing ever, but it's $900. So a lot of this is you get what you pay for and how you intend to stream. Maybe you only need to plug one thing in. But if you think about it, if I have 3 cameras, right, so we have a center camera, right camera, and a left camera, what about capturing the output of the computers I built so you can see the BIOS, you can see the Windows install? So I need exactly 4 inputs, and that's what that Magewell card gives me. And furthermore, the Magewell card has a little dial on it, so you can set them to different settings, so you can have 2 or 3 Magewell cards, and now you've got 8 inputs or 12 inputs. And OBS, they'll take whatever you throw at it, as long as you've got enough processing power and upload bandwidth to send it up there, and the money to buy the cameras and do all the cabling. It's fully expandable. So it gets really expensive depending on what you want to do, what kind of quality, and I just recommend you start out, just like I did. Start out with whatever you got. Start out with the least amount of investment, because you might do it and find out you've run out of ideas, or get frustrated that you're not getting enough views fast enough. Like for me, it took a year, and I completely forgot about it, And then I was reinvigorated when I got the check. I was like, oh, I got to make more videos. That's how it worked for me, and how it'll work for you, and the kind of videos you make, and your environment that you're filming in, how much room you've got to work with, how much budget you've got to work with. This didn't happen overnight. This is a process. And so you start with what you start with. And there are plenty of other YouTube channels out there on varying topics of anything you can imagine. There's YouTube videos with people talking about that. And in this case, when it comes to live streaming or video capture cards, there are channels that review that and tell you all the pros and cons, and they will probably get into far more detail than you will understand or can appreciate at this point. So it's just a matter of you deciding how much you want to spend, understanding what the limitations are when people complain about it in the reviews. That may not matter to you. And then eventually, as you grow and your channel grows and expands, your demands may change, and your knowledge about things you didn't understand before suddenly become very clear. And you're like, oh, I get what they were saying now that I've experienced it. Can you rule of thirds and open up the aperture so we can see some cinematic tests? I'm sure you can on this camera. I don't know how to do it right now, and I need to. I need to take Mike Smith's computer out to FedEx here very soon, so I don't have time to do that right now. But there are Canon review videos of the XF400 here on YouTube where I'm certain they already did that, and they know what they're doing. I don't. So I would listen to them before you listen to me on stuff like that. 010 Tracer says, I'm using the XF100 camera and it's still worth its weight. I've heard a lot of people say the XF300 is still really good. In other words, capture cards are for real live streaming as opposed to streaming games. That's the same. If you're streaming games, you're still live streaming. So it's the same streaming, whether it's a video game or it's you talking to the camera, it's still the same. There's no difference. So Dravko says, thank you for this classic pullover hoodie I just bought. Right on. Thanks for supporting the channel. Hands down, what's the best card? The most expensive one. That's easy. Okay, so I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Like I said, that's just an overview. It's not really a review, because a review would be far more in depth to talk about the bells, whistles, and features and pros and cons of the camera. I probably use a third or a fourth of the features of this camera currently, and I like that I can grow into it versus getting the bare minimum equipment, which was getting the job done, but was still leaving a bit to be desired. So I'm really excited, if you can't tell, because just getting one of these cameras was a huge investment. And with the generosity of a few people that watch, it was my ultimate goal to get 2 more. So I have 3 matching. I've never had 3 matching cameras before. And the last thing I want to do is put that kind of investment into the channel and have another camera come out next year where it's like, well, these don't do any good anymore. So I like the idea that I'm barely using what these cameras can do, because that gives me peace of mind that I shouldn't have to make that investment for a couple of years. In theory, I should be good for 2 to 4 years, depending on how tech evolves. Hopefully, initially 4K will eventually become the standard, where 1080 is currently the standard. 8K may then become the standard after that, but that could take years. And I'm ready for the 4K, I don't want to say revolution, but the 4K replacement of 1080. It just consumes a lot of bandwidth, and right now, some people have that bandwidth and some people don't. And the people that are getting 4K currently through Netflix or YouTube, it's getting compressed. It's getting so compressed, you really aren't getting true 4K. You're getting the resolution, but the bit rate's not good. So that's going to continue to evolve and grow and expand, and I just like knowing that I'll be ready for it when it happens. And in the meantime, as you can see, the color, the depth of field, everything's just so far superior with this camera. And it's, for this camera, this is light work. You know what I mean? Like, that fan's not going to kick on in the camera. It's not working hard enough. I love it. It's fantastic. And so that's going to wrap it up for me. Thanks for everybody for the contributions throughout the stream. And that's Ahmet Git, Brendan Looney, Madi, Yoel, LOL 70721, Blue Star Line, Jim Ennis, Geo Johnson, and Steve Dickens. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I will see you all tomorrow as we continue working on the RGB build and be able to boot that up and get Windows installed on it. And I'll explain what I learned in that liquid cooler install, share that with you, and hopefully get that one wrapped up. And then I have another one to start. I have 3 or 4 to start after that, but that'll be the last one that's going to make it before the magical Christmas day, you know. So hopefully you'll tune in and join me tomorrow and Friday as well. That's going to wrap it up for me. Thanks to all my friends in blue for all of your support, keeping it friendly in the chat room there and setting examples for the community. And yeah, Jimmy's bothering me. It's time for your dinner, isn't it? Yeah, he's ready for dinner. So Jimmy says, hurry up and feed me. Say goodbye already. Okay. I'll see you all again very, very soon. Until then.